Welcome, Aquarius, to a new cosmic chapter. Saturn, your traditional ruler, moves back into the sign of Aries on the 14th of February. You may recall for just over 3 months last year, from the 25th of May, Saturn moved into the sign of Aries, joining up with the rather vague and mysterious energies of Neptune, which moved into the sign for 6 months from the 30th of March. Now, those two are going to come back into a direct conjunction on the 20th of February for the first time exactly in 37 years. But what about Saturn in Aries for you? Because if we do just think about Saturn in this sign in isolation, and we can do that, we know it's in full, not its best location, because Saturn's about initiation, thrust, energy, and action ruled by Mars. Saturn likes to slow things down. But if we look at the natal chart for the exact moment Saturn arrives, we really get the inside track on what you can expect from Saturn's journey over the next 2 years, full time in Aries through to April 2028. I'm going to unpack all of this for you. I'm going to share with you about the retrograde, which begins on the 26th of July, and some upcoming aspects which have opportunities but also challenges. I'm also then going to give you the opportunity to download a guidance leaflet which will really help you to navigate the 2 years ahead. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundel. A very warm welcome. If you're a returning visitor, thank you for your views, likes, and comments. I've had quite a few hypes recently. If that's something that calls out to you, your support there would be appreciated. If you're new here, thank you for joining us. And if you've yet to subscribe, please help the channel to continue to thrive and do so now. So on the screen, we can see your event chart. And the intriguing thing for you personally, Aquarius, is that both your rulers, Saturn and Uranus, are very active in this event. So obviously Saturn's just moved across the third house cusp again. So just in general terms, the third house can be our everyday communications. It can be relationships with siblings, with our neighbours, activities in our local community. It can be our physical movement in a quick way. So exercise. It may be to do with how we think, our ideas, our belief systems. And Saturn obviously can create some headwinds, but because it's your traditional ruler, it's not like you have no experience or appreciation of the energy that Saturn brings. But Neptune, of course, is a very delicate, mysterious, and dreamy vibe. And that combination between the two of them exactly on the 20th of February is intriguing. I feel that what will happen is the fire of Aries will burn off some of the distortion that Neptune has created full time, apart from the 6 months of last year, since 2012, in its home sign of Pisces. Hello, hello. And the good thing about that is that the fire of Aries can therefore help, particularly around your everyday finances, to give you. Now, a lot of us write messages these days, but if you are interested in, or you have your own channel, or you use social media in a creative way, the combination of Neptune and Saturn can give you the discipline, but also the flair in a very constructive way over the next couple of years. But it is going to be very important when it comes to exchanging ideas to be aware of the more sensitive side of things. It's not just all about the practical facts, which obviously Saturn appreciates. But if we just widen the lens a little more, the moon on the day that Saturn arrives is in the sign of Capricorn. And that's quite a psychological location for the moon, which is detrimented in Capricorn, but it is in a very constructive opposition with Jupiter. I feel that when it comes to the exchange of those ideas, like I'm saying, it's important to embrace the more subtle atmospheric energies of Neptune in terms of your ideas and an expression of them. I feel it's also important to be in touch still with the more psychological part of your drive. So, whatever it is that you want to say or achieve with your ideas, just stay in touch with how things truly feel. Do you know the moon opposite Jupiter can actually be very abundant and positive thing? It's just about pacing, and it's also about knowing the moon in Capricorn is about security. And in the 12th house, it just suggests that although you may want to venture forth into the world and express yourself with more conviction and authority, Saturn in Aries, just also stay conscious of the inner world you have too. But there is a glorious set of influences in the sign of Pisces. And this is intriguing because over the last couple of years, apart from those 3 months last year, Saturn has been providing quite a lot of resistance around income. And if you have been finding it difficult to earn money or an old income source dried up, which is entirely possible with Saturn in the second house, there's going to be a great opportunity to replenish your funds because Venus, the planet of money, is very close to the North Node, which is about your directional uh, uh, energies, and Mercury can be very businesslike, even if it isn't at its best in isolation in the sign of Pisces. I feel for you. This is saying if you listen to your hunches, there's a very strong chance you can actually do very well financially. However, the sun in the final decan of your sign, 25 degrees, sub-ruled by Venus, suggests your expression will be very much to do with style and your individual purpose. So you're going to be very invested in your ideas. That's great for an Aquarius person. But just know that the sun is in a square with Uranus. And unfortunately, ever since Uranus first moved into Taurus, which was in the middle of May 2018, it was in a colossal dust-up with Mars, which was just on the anaretic degree of Capricorn at the time, before making its way into Aquarius, but went into a retrograde. So the two were tussling in a very abrasive right angle for the whole of that summer. And so, quite ironically, as Uranus comes to the end of its journey in Taurus, which will complete on the 26th of April, after that brief 4 month visit to Gemini last year, I feel that if you're not very happy where you live, or there is an emotional or family relationship that doesn't quite work for you, you might find yourself very restless and quite outspoken. And that's where having Saturn in the third house is intriguing because it will give you more gravitas. People will be conscious of what you say is what you mean, but you will need to measure your words with care. And that's where just bringing in that more sensitive vibe of Neptune is going to be important. Now, what about the upcoming aspects? Well, we do have some crackerjacks, to be honest. So on So we do have some crackerjacks, to be honest. On March the 8th, Venus is in a conjunction with Saturn. A very important conversation can take place at that time. It may be about a contract. On March the 25th, the Sun applies to Saturn. And if you are an ideas person, and Aquarius people often are, this gives you a fabulous balance between your enthusiasm, your thrust, and your excitement for what you have to say with delivering it in a way that other people can relate to. So that's going to be very helpful too. Now, March the 28th, an aspect which begins straight away with Saturn moving into Aries, but exactly is the sextile to Pluto in your sign. So if you are evolving something, you've been working very hard, perhaps ever since Pluto moved full time into your sign on in November 2024, you can really start to see the benefits come back to you by the end of March. But in April, on the 19th, there's a conjunction between Saturn and Mars. If you do have a meeting at that time or an encounter, or you're traveling anywhere, just be aware that you're going to have a mighty determination to punch across your ideas. But if other people are not attuned to you, it could create a lot of frustration. Now, in July and also December, we have two squares with Saturn from the Sun. The first one is in Cancer, the second in Capricorn. I feel one of the things that we can all learn from Saturn is pacing. And if you do find yourself trying a little bit too hard whilst the sun's making its way through Cancer, trying almost to be too virtuous, you could see you actually getting a bit stressed out. And then later in the year, it's a bit more complex. It's a 12th three energy. Something could come up and out into the open. Maybe someone will make an observation about you that you're not expecting, because just know that as much as Saturn in Aries can be about you sending signals, it can also be about you getting them back from others. So, right at the end of the year, someone could say something to you that's a little bit underwhelming. Maybe they're going to be very, very honest and blunt, but they could say something that they've been thinking about for some while, and that can prove to be a tiny bit wounding. But I must reassure you, Aquarius, that this overall chart, particularly with the Saturn retrograde beginning on the 26th of July through to the 10th of December, that's just saying to you at that period or through that period, if you're traveling anywhere, if you're stepping up your exercise routine, or you're trying to launch anything to do with ideas, it will probably go slower than you would like, and just be prepared for the potential frustration. But this is an event chart which can definitely help you financially in a way that Saturn's been hindering you over the last couple of years. It continues to encourage you to be very much in touch with your individual purpose and passions, but you need to make sure that you're not trying to go too quickly, and that be conscious of it's not just the idea itself, it's the skill with which you deliver it. So if there is someone you encounter that you don't necessarily mesh with straight away, try not to get frustrated. Try to rethink your strategy, because it is there. It's within your scope to actually make some real progress. And just know that if you are living somewhere that's too small, not quite the right environment, uh, uh, maybe there are some family politics. That could be what you want to think about, but also express at points over the next 2 years. Now, you can check out your February forecast and get a deeper understanding of the Aquarius solar eclipse on the 17th of February, the first for 8 years, and it is squaring Uranus. So it's potentially turbulent over the next 6 months. But I also go into Saturn's transit in more detail and share with you Mars in Aquarius is square with Uranus at the end of the month. Again, potentially challenging. But when it comes to finances, some good news can come at the end of March. Please see the link within this video for that, and also to download that free guide to take you through the next 2 years. Now, one of the intriguing things about the conjunction between Saturn and Neptune on the 20th of February at 0 degrees is that 0 degrees is the vernal point, so the start of the zodiac. It's where on the spring equinox the whole journey begins again. So having the combination between Saturn and Neptune there is particularly intriguing to me, because there's a form of astrology called Draconic astrology, where the North Node is moved from wherever it is in the natal chart to 0 degrees Aries. And that can change a chart quite a bit. But the person I want to give you a little bit of an insight to of how this works is Madonna. So on the screen is Madonna's nativity, and she was a Leo. So obviously, a person who's a performer has to have a degree of glow and radiance and magnetism, and having the sun, but also Uranus in the sign of Leo, along with Venus. Venus, I think, is the love of theatrics. Uranus is the confidence to be different. I think the Sun being in the third decan of the sign of Leo, subruled by Mars, is the passion, but also a bit more edge. You can also see when it comes to the edge that Uranus and Mars are in a square. So that gives this person an appreciation of being provocative. Mars is the most prominent planet in the whole chart, so it is going to be very important. It's about pushing boundaries. However, if we dive a little deeper, that cluster of energy in her 12th house points towards someone who could think about things very deeply. Obviously, with the Virgo ascendant and the moon on it, someone who has a great appreciation of their immediate environment. But I feel that's the side of Madonna that has a real interest in psychology, healing, and anything to do with mythology and things like the Kabbalah. And in terms of her success, I feel that's driven a lot by the Sun and Jupiter being in a wonderful sextile, so potentially very fortunate. But if we look at that North Node, which I mentioned before, for her it's on a fixed star called Speaker, Spica, and people with planets on Speaker tend to be very prominent, can be hugely successful, and build up a big following. So the combination between the North Node and Jupiter suggests her life karma, her direction of travel, the North Node, has been about finding balance, interest in the arts, but definitely an ability to make money. So that's her natal chart. But let's look at Madonna's Draconic chart. So remember, the North Node is at 2402 in her natal. We go to a Draconic, and there is the North Node at 0 degrees Aries on the exact degree that this Saturn Neptune conjunction is happening. And that's why I wanted to tell you about it. Now, when I did share Madonna's chart a few years ago and said that she was a Leo, I had loads of people write to me and say, no, she's not, she's an Aquarius. But clearly, she is a Leo because she's born on the 16th of August. But in the Draconic version of the chart, her sun is on the anaretic degree of Capricorn. So this is a person with a real instinct for business, but also perhaps with the flavor of progressiveness that comes from Aquarius energy, which is the combination still of Pluto and Mercury, very analytical, but the combination of the ascendant and the moon in Aquarius is very much more to do with being groundbreaking than the Virgo in her natal chart, which can be someone who wants to provide services, is very detail orientated, very organized. She may be all of those things, but in this chart, the more radical part of her nature really is that much more visible. She still has the need to perhaps be more meditative, quiet, take time out of the limelight with the 12th house energy. And also, Saturn in the fourth house means that, you know, home and family is important to her. And I think it's right that she's adopted some children. So that shows a great responsibility and a great empathy to look after those who are less fortunate. But that combination of the planets stay in the same relationship, so we have the same aspect. We still have Uranus in a square with Mars, but Mars here is also very close to Spica in the nature chart. So as Mars, Draconic conjunct the North Node and Jupiter in her natal. And, you know, the ninth house is about expansion, it's about risk, independence. Uh, it is true that Mars is technically detrimented, but in this illustration, you can see that the Moon and Mars still very strong. So she's a great communicator. So, what the principles of Draconic astrology are is that they're the root of who we are. So, when we come into this world, Draconic's the root of our personality, and the natal is the fruit that comes from the tree of life that we go through. So, if we really work at it, we can see the outcome of our life physical journey much more like the natal chart. But some people find the Draconic chart represents their personalities much more. For example, my Draconic midpoint, sun and moon, is Cancer, you know, and I am very much a home lover. And people who are close to me, been close to me for a very long time, you know, I value those relationships very much. So, if you'd like to understand the difference between your natal chart and your Draconic chart, just like I've shared for Madonna, you can order your Draconic 12-month forecast and get your character analysis, your Draconic Life Roadmap report. And if you apply Draco 26 at the checkout, you'll get 50% off. But also, if you would like to order your natal 12-month forecast, a natal life roadmap report. If you apply Astro 26 at the checkout, you can get 50% off for those too.